see them there, but it was a drag race to the line between Lindberg and Sufi as the race got underway. Certainly Sufi got the better of the starts, and Lindberg unfortunately couldn't really match Danny Sufi in the early stages. An early lead, a clear lead for Sufi through the first few turns. Meanwhile, John Brownson and Quinton Joseph were having a bit of a scrap for third and fourth position. Wolfgang Peyer behind them as well in the number 12 Racing Experience car, and Michael Doppelmayr at the rear of the field during these first stages of the race. While Wolfgang Peyer was somewhat lonely, as was Doppelmayr behind him. It was a close run thing for third place. Brownson was only ever a couple of seconds clear of the Belgian Quinton Joseph in this early phase of the race. Of course, the first 20 minutes fairly steady going for everybody, but the pit window would do its thing at the halfway point of the race and shuffle up the deck a little bit in this prototype Winter Series race. There you can see the gap about as big as it got in the battle for third and fourth position. Quinton Joseph would sometimes be getting close to the rear wing of Brownson. Then Brownson would respond. It was a high-speed chess match for third and fourth position between DKR Engineering and CLX Motorsport, of course, formerly known as Cool Racing. Meanwhile, for Philipp Lindberg, it was a battle against his own front left tyre for quite a long part of this race, having to deal with some tyre lockup on occasion. But all in all, putting in a good shift at this time in second position. However, of course, the two drivers behind him, or the two cars behind him, would be taken over by pro drivers for the second phase of the race. And not only that, but they would be with a 30-second shorter pit stop, owing to the pit stop handicap system we have here in the prototype Winter Series. So 129 seconds for the cars behind him, 158 for himself. That was a high pressure scenario for Philipp Lindberg, and as we'd find out, second place wasn't going to stay his for long. Danny Sufi was comfortable in the race lead, and further back in the field it was fairly clear running for Wolfgang Peyer as well. The ex-Dakar driver, though, rider, I should say, handing over to Matthias Jakobsen, who just struggled slightly to get the car out of the pit lane, but eventually he did. This was the shift, or rather the move back into second place for Lawrence Her and DKR Engineering. Or at the time, I should say, it was third position there for Her over over David Drew, sorry. Danny Sufi exited back out into the race lead, while Philipp Lindberg was in reality our race leader for 1 or 2 laps before he served his pit stop. We thought he'd come back out in second place, at least I thought he would, by a few seconds, but as we found out later on, post pit stop, he wouldn't be in second place for long. He exited the pit lane, and just behind him would be the DKR Engineering number 3 of Lawrence Her. I think Lindberg realised keeping his powder dry was perhaps the way forward. Didn't fight too hard up against Lawrence Her, who was released into second place. Shortly thereafter, David Drew would find himself on the rear of the Lindberg-driven high-class racing car and would get through into third place. Lindberg would ultimately finish fourth position, ahead of Wolfgang Peyer and Matthias Jakobsen and Pierre Caffer in the M Racing car. In sixth place, he would remain in sixth, but he was also closing in on Danny Sufi. He was just over a lap down on the race leading car, and that would become quite a compelling battle, as it were, on the track. A phantom battle between the car in last and the car in first. This was the moment that Pierre Caffer unlapped himself, got through, remaining in sixth position, but at least getting himself onto the lead lap. Alas, it was to be short-lived, because just 2 corners later, he would just put a wheel wrong going into turn 3. The rear end would let go. Danny Sufi did a good job of avoiding. Pierre Caffer would rejoin the race, as you can see here. However, a slight error, perhaps a slightly dented ego for Pierre after that error. Sufi then was left clear at the front of the order to cruise home to a race victory. and he would do so at the front. Equally, Lawrence Hurt, while he was seeing David Drew close in slightly from third place, it wasn't to be a result for him. It was a checkered flag, though, for Danny Soufi. Soufi and Conrad Motorsport back in the Prototype Winter Series, and the reigning Drivers' Champion from 2024 has started 2025 firmly on the right foot. Pulling into the pit lane and would receive warm embrace from his team boss, Franz Conrad, and his colleagues at Conrad Motorsport. A really good start to the season for Soufi, who eventually won the race by 10.8 seconds. Lawrence Hur showed his pace and closed in massively towards the end. David Drew of CLX Motorsport in third position. Philip Lindberg 30 seconds back from them in fourth overall. Racing Experiences, Matthias Bier-Jakobsen in fifth, and Pierre Kaffer rounding out the order in sixth.